Who would have thought that an underground music born in the street corners and house parties in the Bronx would now be one of the most influential musical genres ever? Of course, we're talking about hip hop. Now you can't turn on the radio station or go on Spotify or, any other streaming platform without hearing hip hop or music influenced by it. I mean, even country music, rock, and all sorts of other genres have all been infused with these rhythms. And to such an extent that even its root name, hip hop, has almost been detached from it, and it's become pop. It's become just part of mainstream musical culture. The music is so influential and has crossed so many borders. We have to start thinking about it differently. This and many other themes is what we're going to be exploring on today's episode with the help of my dear friend Rafi, music producer known as Earegula. We're going to be talking about what does he do as a producer? What does that mean? And what does his relationship with an artist look like? How does he use different influences from different genres to infuse his music? We'll talk a little bit about the history of hip hop and where it's at right now. We'll talk about this concept of quote unquote making it in the industry and where he sees himself on that spectrum. And we spend a good bit of time talking about what Earegula refers to as vibes. That feeling that he puts into his music that is able to just reach through your eardrums and into your heart and soul. And he'll often refer to this concept of music being a ladder to the soul. I just can't wait for you to hear it from his own words.
Hip hop has always been like a revolutionary art. Within revolution, you have evolution. It evolves to something different. So that means that I can take hip hop and what it means to me and turn it into my art.
Welcome to the One Planet Music Podcast, where we explore the role of music in an ever-changing world. As a listener, you'll gain motivation, inspiration, and practical knowledge from fellow musicians and music professionals who are making an effort to perfect their craft while having meaningful impact. I'm your host, Daniel Rinaldi. Now, before we start diving in with Earegula or Rafi, I'll mainly be using Rafi, I want to give a little bit of context. He and I know each other from when I was back in maybe early high school, late middle school, when I was living in Atlanta, Georgia. And both he and I are part of the Baha'i community, and that's how we met. Now, he'll make reference to it and actually how it influenced his perspective on music. But if you're not familiar with the Baha'i faith, basically it's a world religion whose main purpose is to bring about unity in the world. Unity of all kinds, of races, of gender, of nationalities, of religions, and much more. Now, that's definitely a topic for, a different podcast, and we can dive in a little bit further later on. But I just wanted to give you a little context so you're not lost. So anyways, Rafi and I actually started playing in a rock band together. I mean, we weren't performing or anything like that. We would just sort of practice once in a while. And eventually later in high school, I started getting into beat production and making hip hop beats for artists in high school and so on. And I was recording out of my parents' house in a little closet. And Rafi was one of those artists. He would come over and I would record him. And so you'll actually get to hear a little snippet of some of those early amateur recordings. I also want to tell you just a little bit about Rafi. Well, Rafi's such a beautiful soul. He's just one of those guys that brings a lot of positivity whenever you're around him. I've never seen him upset. He's always either smiling or laughing. And is just really able to connect with anybody. And his music making is just amazing. He started when he was practically a baby. I mean, and it runs in the family. So, I mean, look at this. He got a drum set at age 3. So that gives you an idea as to how much music is in his blood. And at age 4, he started playing guitar. And I mean, it goes back even further. When his uncle was in a band in church, and his uncle's band was managed by this one guy who was also managing folks like Ella Fitzgerald, Bill Cosby, James Brown, and more. I'm so glad I got to have this conversation with Rafi, but unfortunately, the quality of the call is not the best. We had some technical issues. We even had to do a re-recording of part of the call. So I want you to just hang in there, have patience. Most of it is definitely clear and you can understand. So just bear with me a little bit here.
Around the time that we met, that's around the time that I recorded my first record. I started dabbling in beats a little bit. And the band, it's funny because we didn't have a drummer. We didn't have a drummer in our band in high school. So it was like the guitar, the bass, and the vocalist, So it was kind of funny, but I mean, we made it work though. People thought it was cool, So it was just a lot of experimenting, just trying to find myself musically around that time, early 2000, 2001, 2002. Gradually I started to find a way to incorporate all of these elements as far as like wanting to be different, step outside the box, but still be familiar to everybody, all my peers or whatever. So it ended up being a cool experience. And I must say, like, me being a part of Baha'i Faith, that had opened up my scope as far as worldly tones, like not just hip hop, not just rock. Like I'm growing up hearing Persian music and all kinds of music from around the world, and it's just like a lot of those elements are a part of really what made me who I am right now, musically. So I definitely contribute a lot of that to the Baha'i Faith. And that was, and that point in the early 2000s, that definitely was a point where, like, I was trying to find a way to glue all that together.
Yeah, because when I met you, I remember you were listening to a lot of Tool and playing a lot of Tool music. So we're talking like rock,
Oh yeah.
More experimental stuff as well. And I remember when we were first talking about hip hop, and I was producing some beats. I was getting into beat production.
Mm-hmm.
You were rapping. I got to do a few of your recordings. We were just sort of tinkering around at that point, at least for me. Here's a little sample of a song Rafi and I recorded back in high school. That's Rafi doing everything, both the beat and rapping, although nowadays he's mainly focused on production.
And that's not good, because in this jump we need some unity, and I don't want to hear another person's eulogy. Sad faces, sad cause, I feel like menopauses. Look up on my adverbs, similes, and my clauses to understand what I am saying to you folks today. For every thought and every action, there's a time and place. For everything, 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 for everything.
You were also into funk. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember you had a lot of funk influences.
Oh yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, like, why is it meaningful for you to have such a diverse background of music?
I've always been told that music is a ladder to the soul. There's so many different souls out here that come from so many different backgrounds. It is very important to me to be able to touch as many people as I can, with the diverse understanding or the world views of music, And on top of that, it's fun to experiment those sounds, those tones, those different languages, it's different languages, but we know that music is universal, because you can go to France and they're singing English lyrics to one of the top artists. It's like, you don't know a lick of English, but lyric for lyric this record. Those are the type of things that make me want to stay as diverse as I can, and it's just boring. Be one dimensional. You know, it's just
Right.
boring.
Tell me, Rafi, how like all of this background, you know, you've been listening to a lot of music, you appreciate a lot of music. But from what I understand, you are focusing right now a lot on hip hop or more urban sound. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, are you focusing on that? Where are you at this moment?
Well, I do have like some artists that I'm working with currently in Atlanta. One guy by the name of King Floaty. He's a Atlanta legend, cousin of CeeLo Green. He's part of the legendary Addict crew. We're working on a project right now. But see, even with that, I can't just work on that. You see what I'm saying? Like, I just can't just work on hip hop. Like, I'm working on a project as well with my boy JT Star on, it's like 80s soundtrack music called Synthwave. And we're putting together that project. Yeah, hip hop is, I mean, it's dear to my soul, you know. But I just try to dabble with everything. I guess it's like production ADD, if you want to call it that. Like I can't just stay focused on one genre in particular. Like I have to reach out and grab different genres. And the cool thing is within hip hop, you know, it's no rules. So with it being no rules, I can incorporate the synthwave sound if I wanted to. I can incorporate rock. I can incorporate, you know, these different sounds into hip hop and come up with something new or a sound that's unfamiliar, being that there's no rules to it. So
throughout this episode, you're going to be hearing samples of Earegula's beat productions. We will also make reference to a lot of different artists, and I wish, you know, I could put samples of their music, but for legal purposes, I just can't. So pretty much all the music you're going to be hearing on this episode is produced by Rafi. To explain a little bit how the hip hop industry works, actually, which we don't necessarily talk about directly, is that the producer makes the instrumental beat and will kind of shop it around and find different rappers or singers to hop on it. And when you join the beat with the rap or the vocals, then you have a song. So the music you'll hear on this episode is all instrumental and they're all potential songs. And if you're interested in purchasing or licensing any of these instrumentals, please contact Earegula. A lot of people have different definitions of hip hop, or there's a lot of there's just so many different opinions as to what hip hop is.
Right.
Let's take a few steps back and go into the history a little bit.
Okay.
Like what can you tell us about like where hip hop came from and like what is hip hop?
Well, from what I understand, hip hop comes from the Bronx in New York. Pioneers like KRS-One, Kumo D, Grandmaster Flash and his crew of people,
right.
The Zulu Nation with African Bambaataa and everything they were doing, you know. And
yeah, we're talking late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, late 70s, early 80s. Now, when I started to get into hip hop was like the Kool Moe Dee era, because Wild Wild West was like one of my favorite records, and that was like what, late 80s, something like that. So that's when I started to, you know, fall in love with it. And what's cool about that is the person that produced that record ended up being my mentor. So that was cool.
Wow.
Teddy Riley, he just received his Hollywood Star in California, and he came up with the New Jack Swing sound. He did No Diggity, featuring Dr. Dre. He was a part of Blackstreet. He formed Blackstreet. So, it was cool having him as a mentor. And he told me that he produced that record when we sat down. And I was like, yo, that is crazy. That was one of my favorite songs.
Talk about full circle.
Exactly. And the universe bringing things into fruition, So it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
So yeah, definitely we can, trace hip hop then, and even though we can probably get even deeper to like African, roots and so on. But let's say that that's where it started, and it's evolved a lot since then. And I agree with you in that there aren't really any more rules, and I feel like more and more artists are breaking the rules as to what hip hop is and its definition and its use and its function, and even how it's used as a platform to speak about different things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even to the point that like you hear a lot of quote unquote hip hop songs that have no beat, like there's even no kick, no snare, anything along those lines. It's just pure melody, but somebody rapping over it.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Like, why is that significant? That it has like a root, but then it starts changing over time. Like, what does that mean to you? And like, how does that impact your work?
Well, it's evolution. Hip hop has always been like a revolutionary art. Within revolution, you have evolution. It evolves to something different. So that means that I can take hip hop and what it means to me and turn it into my art. When people debate like, oh, this rapper is better than this rapper, or this person is better than this person, or whatever, when they start doing that, I say like, how can we debate, or how can we have these type of debates when, these people come from different backgrounds and this is their art? You see what I'm saying? Like, you won't have a painting. There's different eras of art as far as like painting. You see what I'm saying? So like hip hop feels like it's the same way. Mm-hmm. It could be abstract. It could have abstract sound. They could talk about some of the most like profound things, or it could be as bubblegum as it needs to be, or whatever. You see what I'm saying? That's just the way hip hop is. And so, there's no need to debate who's better or what have you because of these types of concepts. And so with hip hop evolving from, have particular sounds or a certain format, that is out the window.
Right.
And I mean, to be honest, it never really had a format, but there was, it was certain things that was expected, I should say, from a hip hop artist to do or to say or look like or whatever. You see what I'm saying? So that's the beautiful part, because that opens up the doors for a person like me who likes to experiment different sounds and different genres. That opens up the floodgates for me, so I can, do what I love to do without any question, or, having my ego in the way of like, am I doing this right? Are they gonna like this? That's gone. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't have to even think about that, because I could just do me.
So I find that really insightful, Rafi, and I resonate a lot with that. So from what I've been observing throughout the years is that there are a lot of misconceptions about hip hop or the impact it's had on the world, because obviously it has impacted the whole world and influenced every corner of the world, every country, every city to some extent, some more than others, where people are now doing fusions with hip hop. They've sort of adopted it in their own way, and you see all these different expressions.
Right.
So we know it's had a huge impact and it's being fused with other musics. But I feel like there's also a lot of backlash or a lot of misconceptions, maybe as to some of the negative impact it's had. Can we talk about this a little bit? Like, what are your thoughts on the impact that it's had, both positive and negative?
Well, the positive aspects is, like I said before, it opens up for creative freedom. The negative aspects is the exact same thing. It opens up for creative freedom. So it was a rapper that said, "I'm just reporting the news," and that was, I can't remember who it was. It was like Ice Cube. It was one of the West Coast rappers. I can't remember who it was. And I know a lot of my homies, they're gonna hear this and they're gonna be like, "Yo, you supposed to know the name of these old school groups. You supposed to know." Like, yeah,
you're supposed to be a historian on hip hop. Earegula.
Exactly. I'm supposed to be the Wikipedia of hip hop. But I get where some people get like the negative aspects of hip hop, especially when they use the N word in records, it's how people speak. I mean, I remember my dad telling me that my grandma would use that word. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so much our generation that is starting things. It's previous generations that, because the world didn't start with us. It didn't start with hip hop. You see what I'm saying? So the problems and the issues that were created prior to hip hop even being in the forefront, there were issues there. So,
it goes deeper.
It goes deeper than what these cats are saying on these records.
It's just that hip hop became a platform, just a form of communication so big that it amplified both the good and the bad.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
We can't point fingers. All we can do is, all right, so we stated the problem, so now let's talk about a solution. So that's where you get like dope groups like Outkast who talk about solutions. Like they have problems, they had the problems, and then they had the solutions at the same time. If people don't grasp where I'm coming from with that, they should definitely study Aquemini. Aquemini has so many hidden gems of spiritual.
Aquemini album by Outkast.
Yes, Aquemini by Outkast. Yes, like that is like one of the most profound work of art that has come out of Atlanta, and it's a lot of points of spirituality that are mentioned, and it's just hidden in there. It's tucked in there, and it's just like years down the line, as you start to read more and start to develop more, you be like, oh, that's what you were talking about, So,
since you gave that context, like, where do you find yourself in that spectrum? Then, like, how do you want to use that platform? And again, I don't want to limit it to just hip hop because of what we've already talked about. Like, it can sometimes be we can limit ourselves by genre, but how do you want to use that platform for your creative work?
So I have artists that, speak about the worldly things, I should say, in aspects of like materialism and all that, that's their reality. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, though, I still want to give a vibe despite what they're talking about. And really, to be honest, sometimes the way to get through to people is to talk their language. It's like conform to infiltrate. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but like you conform to what is the norm in order to get your message across.
And what is your message?
My message is music is a ladder to the soul. I'm going to find a way to touch somebody. You see what I'm saying? Even just through like, cause I speak like, yeah, I rapped at one point or what have you, but I found a way to, or I feel like I found a way to connect through people through the things that I play. You know, certain progressions, certain keys, like the sciences of music. Like I try to dig deep into that. Like for example, I was playing one of me and Floater's records for somebody, and you know they're definitely not on the wave of like what he was talking about as far as like, you know, the worldly stuff or doing this and doing that or what have you. But at the same time, though, he was like, "Man, those chords, those chords are crazy." Like, you see what I'm saying? So it was still a way to connect with him despite everything else. So it was like a good marriage as far as like, yeah, Floyd was rapping to it, but the music underneath glued everything together, and it draw his attention to that. You see what I don't know if that makes any sense.
Sure, yeah, definitely. You're using, even though there's lyrics that maybe wouldn't be like what you would have written down if you're writing the lyrics, you were writing a certain message with the melodies you were creating. Would that be a correct way to?
Yeah, okay. Exactly.
So, Rafi, let's talk a little bit about you. You've been mentioning you've worked with this artist and that artist, or you've been producing. Tell me a little bit, like, what does it mean to produce an artist for you? Like, what does that relationship look like?
Well, the relationship with as a producer to an artist is, and my job as a producer is to bring out the best of that artist's personality and to get people familiar with who this person is as an individual. When it comes to working with the artist, I like to like sit down and vibe with them, talk about other stuff, you know, not even just about music, just current events, what's going on in their lives, like there's all kinds of stuff. And so from that conversation, I start to capture a vibe from that person, and I'm able to capture that through the music that we start to create. That leads to when somebody listens to that record that we worked on, they will hear the vibe that we captured in the studio working on that record. I'm pretty sure there's plenty of times when you listen to a record like, yo, it sounds like they had fun making that song.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's what I'm trying to do. That is my job as a producer. You're going to feel the vibe of the fun that we had making that record. And I feel like that can inspire other people to do their or create their own art. You see what I'm saying? Because it inspired me. Just hearing how people had fun on records, it inspired me to go in the exact same way and capture vibes and spread that to the listener. So, and I guess that still goes back to me saying, you know, music is a ladder to the soul. You know, it's some other sciences that are at play when you're producing a record, because you got to think about like okay, if this person is on the label, I don't want to be too far out the box with what I'm doing or what we're creating to where like a label is able to actually market it, you know, because there are in the industry certain trends that are going on at different points in time. So you want to, you know, capture those trends so it's easy to market it, but at the same time, though, you're still able to bring yourself into it. So
yeah, how do you navigate that? If, let's say, you as a producer, you have a particular taste, you have particular taste you have a particular creative flow, but you're also dealing with the artist's opinion and his or her creative background. And there are perhaps other people involved, such as a manager or a record label, or publisher, or who knows what other parties are involved, or even another producer if you're collaborating with another producer.
Right.
How do you deal with all these different opinions, backgrounds, and visions?
Well, I understand that producing is a catering business, but the crazy thing is when I sit down and I vibe with that artist, 8 times out of 10, I won't say 9 times out of 10, I say 8 times out of 10, I'm actually able to capture the vibe that artist will be able to rock with. Certain points, like I remember working on a remix for CeeLo, and his son had a group called Swagoo, and the song was featuring CeeLo. And I remember they wanted a remix, and so I did the remix for the record. And then next thing you know, I mean, they loved it, but then they were like, it was funny. They were like, "Yo, he should do something. Try to mix like Flow Rider with like." It was like a crazy like combination that they had said, the A&R. So I had to like, in my head, I was like, yo, what are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? Like, it was like Flow Rider and like the Gorillas or something. I don't know. It was so crazy. Like, I can't even imagine Flow Rider on the Gorilla song. But how do I even put that together? You know? So I just found a way to take certain elements of what they were talking about, and I shot them that record. And they were like, yo, this is crazy. This is exactly what I was thinking. You know what I'm saying? So vibes. That's the other word. Capturing vibes. Vibes is my all around. Like if you ask any of my homeboys, B, who's like my best friend and he works with me in the music. If you ask any of these guys, they be like, yo, Rafi's vibe has to be like on point. You know what I'm saying? So from my vibe being on point, I'm actually able to capture other people's vibe and mold it into something that I feel like that's what they were looking for. That's what they want, you know? So that's how I deal with it.
All right, Rafi, why don't we geek out a little bit and tell me what is some of the equipment that you use? What are your tools for the music that you produce?
Well, some of the tools I use is like the Machine MK3. I've been like a user of Native Instrument for a very long time. I use the Akai Force, which is like a new product by Akai. Actually, I'm a beta tester for them too, so it's pretty cool. I get to try the new software before it drops. And
oh snap!
Yeah. And
do they contact you or you contact them?
I contacted them. And like based off of the information that I sent them, like they sent me an invite like within like the hour or so. Like it was pretty cool. Like not a lot of people tried to become that and they weren't able to go through with it. But yeah,
VIP access.
Exactly. So yeah, the Kai Force. Like I said, anything Native Instrument. And I like the Force because, you know, my vibes switch. I'm kind of weird. Like one day I would want to be on my computer and vibe out, and then another time I just want to vibe out just with a standalone device. So that's why I love the Force. And of course, the DAWs I use, Ableton. The Force is just like Ableton, so it's like Ableton and MPC all in one. So that's a cool look. And my workflow has to be A1. You know, of course, that's with anybody, but you know, my workflow determines, you know, if I'm able to get those creative ideas out and get everything, all my ideas, the blueprints of what or the skeleton of what it is I'm trying to put together. I'm able to get those ideas out quick.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, for me personally too, I almost don't care what tools I have as long as I can work well with them at any given moment.
Right.
And so for you, is that really important then? Is like the workflow is like as long as you can sort of get it done quickly but do it well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. If I can knock these ideas out quick, EQ it, you know, the best I can, just real quick, you know, just so I can hear everything. As long as I can do everything quick, then I'm good.
Rafi, changing subjects a little bit. You know, there's this whole concept that goes around a lot in the music world of making it, quote unquote, making it. And whether you're an artist or a producer, people have different perspectives as to what that means. And for some people, it might mean working with a big artist. And once you're working with that big artist, it's like, you've made it. Do you think about this? Is that important to you? Or how do you think about these things?
Well, I work with a couple big artists, and my thing is like, it's not that I made it, it's that the work is starting. You see what I'm saying? Like it's going to be more work now. It only just begun, as opposed to like, oh yeah, I'm on now, like, or I made it, like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's still more things to achieve. It's still more things to learn. It's still more ways to grow. So I can't necessarily say that I would say that I truly have made it. You see what I'm saying?
Definitely.
So
yeah, and also I think what a lot of younger, you know, or up and coming producers or artists believe is that once you're working with a certain class of artists or so, then like all of a sudden you're financially set, or you can only you're doing music full time, getting an income from it. But the reality is a lot of people are also working at another job, whether it's part time or full time. And from what I understand, you're teaching at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Been teaching.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay. Yeah, I've been teaching recording art since 2017. I took the job mainly because when I was working with Teddy Riley, one of the things he said was like, you know, one of the ways that you have a legacy is by teaching people the things that you know and helping them. You see what I'm saying? And definitely, you know, somebody like Teddy Riley, who has had like Pharrell and one of my other mentors, Danger, you know what I'm saying? A lot of different producers that have become very successful have worked under Teddy, and he taught them things, or, you know, showed them certain things, what have you, and they continuously pay tribute to him. So, you know, and it's not anything egotistical. It's just that I understand that, like, you know, if I have the knowledge, why not share it? And it has nothing to do with like, oh, you know, I want them to like worship me, or no, it's nothing like that. You know what I'm saying? It's I want to teach people the things that I know, because it's only right, it's only fair, it's only just. You know what I'm saying? Despite the fact that, like, you know, I had to like research things myself, but if I can make it easier, then why not? You know what I'm saying? And it's up to that individual to take everything in. So that's how I take my classes, and I tell my students, like, you know, we're all growing together. You know, it's not like I'm in here as your as your dictator, as your instructor. You know, I'm continuously growing too, and I'm going with you all. So, like, you know, I'm facilitating this course. Like, I'm facilitating a conversation. that's how I teach my class, and I mean, I feel like I get pretty good reception from that, and it's pretty cool, man. I love it. I love teaching.
That's beautiful, Rafi. Tell me a little bit as to what's next for you. Like, what do you feel that either is coming up next, or something that you really want to explore?
It's a few things. Well, a couple of things that are in the bag right now, as far as getting into the video game world. I've linked with some people that are pretty prominent in the video game industry, as far as like sound design, reaching out to different people, having me go to different conferences or whatever for video games and sound design for that. Meeting different sound designers, different independent video game developers, and that's been pretty cool. So that's the next step, and also doing sound for movies. And one day I will score movies, and I'm already looking at some master classes on scoring movies. So I'm trying to get there.
You can give me the crash course on it when you finish it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I got you.
Because when you teach it to me, then you'll learn it even more.
Right.
You mentioned several times this motto of yours that music is like a ladder for the soul.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make sure that the music that you're creating or working on can meet that standard, that very high standard that you have for your motto?
It's kind of complicated, but it's not, as far as like the science that I try to put into what I'm working on. Because, with each sound, and I know this may be like above some people's head, I don't know, it may resonate with some people, but like, frequencies create colors control emotions. So that's why, like, when you see blues or greens or whatever, you feel a certain way when you're looking at a painting or an art piece. So those same type of concepts, because what's crazy is I have that what they call it, synesthesia. Is that what it's called? Where like you see sounds.
Oh wow.
So like, and I've been like that since I was little. Like I always, like, if I heard sounds, it would be an image that would pop in my head. Like I can visualize these sounds and these with these colors, and it kind of helps guide me to like evoke emotions into my music. And I've done my own studies or what have you, as far as like there's certain keys that people use, or certain keys that lead to these frequencies that bring out certain emotions. I've studied these, and I've slowly been trying to utilize these tools to help bring these emotions. So that's where it's like, I feel like even when I'm talking about, composing for like movies and things like that, these are the type of things that I feel like, can gravitate somebody into the art that you're working on or composing. You see what I'm saying? It could be from working on a movie score to working on a hip hop record or a pop record or whatever, any genre. It's a science behind it that I feel like we as humanity have been gifted with, these frequencies to connect with one another. So yeah, that's my spiel. And
Rafi, what would you say to an upcoming producer, maybe something that you wish you would have known when you were getting started?
I would say, make sure you learn the ins and outs of your craft. Understand that like the music that we're working on or that we're creating, it can control the minds of the masses. Like just like what I was just saying, as far as like, these frequencies and things of that nature. Like we can change the world through music. It's not just like, I mean, yeah, it could be a hobby. You know what I'm saying? It can definitely be a hobby, but don't take this art for granted. Like cherish it. Like make it meaningful for the world. And that's something that it started off as a hobby for me. I loved it. I always loved music, but as I got older, I started to understand that like, these tunes are deeper than just tunes. These are like, and they can make or break a person, so that's what I would share. And always be yourself. Definitely be yourself. I mean, I always felt like that, so it's not like anything that I would have told myself back then, but like I always tried to be myself. I always tried to definitely step outside your comfort zone when it comes to music. Don't just stick to one thing, like take elements from everywhere, because everybody's going to enjoy it.
Rafi, it's been awesome talking to you. Where can people find you online? How can they contact you?
You can find me on Instagram at Earegula. That's Earegula. Or you can find me on SoundCloud. That's Earegula Music. Earegula, and then music, like how you spell it. So no trick spelling with that. Like my boy Doom. So Earegula Music or Earegula on Instagram. Hit me up.
All right. Rafi, aka Earegula, pleasure talking to you, man. Always a blessing, and I hope to get to see you soon this year.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. And we me, you, and Millz, we definitely need to cook up something too, man.
Definitely, man. Actually, I didn't tell you what happened. Man, it was really well. Thank you for joining me on this episode of One Planet Music. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're liking what you're hearing so far, please subscribe and please give us a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps to make sure other people find it and can enjoy it as well. And of course, you can always share it on social media with your friends and family. You can just take a screenshot on your phone and then share it. Sharing is caring, as they say. When you do so, please feel free to tag us at oneplanetmusic.fm on Instagram, and everywhere else, just put One Planet Music. You've been listening to One Planet Music, and I'm your host, Daniel Rinaldi. See you on the next episode.